So gap status of New England, this basically is changing a little bit. For years, we basically just had one packing plant registered in Massachusetts, gap certified, and that was J.P. Sullivan. But we had no farmers. Now, we have a few farmers on the list. At some point, as I unravel my notes here, USDA has a website that lists everybody that is gap certified. And the way I usually can get to it is, I used to be able to Google GAP USDA and put in the state, and the very first thing that popped up, I'd click on it and it would give me the sheet for that state. Now you're going to be a little bit more creative, and I think I use GAP certification. I put the state in, and but it's the GAP program is under the USDA marketing program, the same program that handles organic certification. And that's where it is. You can find it on the USDA website. But if you're just curious, I wonder who's GAP certified in New Hampshire. I wonder who's GAP certified in Vermont. I wonder who's GAP certified in Massachusetts. You can find it there. And there's a handful of growers now. The more growers that want to get involved. I'm doing a couple of GAP trainings up in Vermont. I did one. I'm doing one next week. And they have 8 farms in Vermont at this point. New Hampshire is moving along. They've got a few certified. But if you think about the scheme of things, we got 7,700 farms in the state, and right now we have 4, 5, or 6 farms that are GAP certified. The people up in Maine have done it for years, way up in Worcester County with their broccoli production and production and their potato production. GAP has come to bite them occasionally because you have to have due diligence. And just the comment up there is that a lot of broccoli production in Worcester County, Maine. They've had upwards of 50,000 acres of potatoes and 5,000 acres of broccoli. And wildlife is big up there, moose especially. They like to track through fields. They like to follow the same areas. And as a result, those areas are not clean. And there was a day up there where the tractor trailer load was full. They had worked on it all day, and a bunch of boxes of broccoli were in there. And then as they were finishing it up, they noticed that one of the harvesting trailers that had gone through the field had quite a bit of horse poop stuck to the bottom of it. And no one knew when and where and how it got there and what happened and whether or not any of it was up on the broccoli. So they ended up throwing away the entire tractor trailer load of broccoli that day after it was harvested. Rhode Island has had a program that they started that really is not USDA GAP, but is really geared more towards farmer school programs. And they are working to, I think, eventually try to make it as compatible with USDA GAP as they can. So where are we heading? We don't know beyond Hannaford's or Price Chopper which of our customers are going to be looking for it. To be perfectly honest, last year I expected that Whole Foods and Trader Joe's were going to call me up because they're 2 of my customers and ask me to become GAP certified, but they have not. And I believe that the reason that they have not is because the Hannaford thing, everybody's really watching that. Hannaford came out and they said, we want everybody certified, actually for the 2009 growing season. And they realized after how complicated that was for people just to do it right away, and that they needed some guidance and some help and some education and so forth. Actually for the 2000, they told people in 2009 they wanted to be certified for 2010. It didn't quite work out as quickly. But now they have to show progress towards GAP certification for 2011. They have a deadline of somewhere around December here, mid-December, of showing Hannaford's that they are on track and ready, and Hannaford's will not buy product from them in 2011 unless they are GAP certified. So it's something that we're all looking at. We don't know where it's going to go. So our biggest fears as farmers, quickly. We all say we don't have the big guy issues, and let me just say something right up front, because this is all part of what's going on in Washington and why there was so much controversy over Senate 510. And maybe I should just take a minute to put that in perspective for you. We don't have a lot of material to cover. Right now, the Food and Drug Administration has enough authority already to say that they want every farmer in this country to become GAP certified. They already have that authority. It doesn't make any difference whether Senate 510 passes or not. But the House bill that passed a year ago, and the Senate bill that they are constantly trying to pass. We learned today that it actually passed, but now there's a little issue with it. It actually has to go back to the floor, and then it has to get resolved, of course, with the House version, and then it has to go to the President, and then eventually the FDA has to develop guidelines and regulations based on this legislation. But the reality is that what this legislation is really designed to do and what it's going to do, it's going to put some reins on FDA and make them think about size and risk and how it varies among growers. And then this is what I tell people. you know, just like with pesticide use or fertilizer use, risk is equal to toxicity times exposure. So it's not just how toxic something is, it's how much you're exposed to it. So something can be incredibly toxic, but you only get a very small amount of exposure, and it could have less risk than something that is relatively non-toxic, but you're exposed to 24/7. And that's what determines risk. Well, it's the same thing with food safety. Any one of us, I don't care if it's one of us that's a sole proprietor, or one of our employees on a farm in New England, or an employee on a farm in California that's got 5,000 employees. Any one of us can have an employee that goes to the bathroom and doesn't wash their hands, and goes and starts cutting lettuce, and handles 2,000 heads that afternoon. Okay, any one of us can have that happen. But what's different is what happens beyond that. Is it 50 boxes of lettuce that day coming from one farm that would have limited distribution? Or is it that field in California with the Earthbound Farms spinach that got mixed that day with spinach from 1,000 other acres and put in bags and distributed to 45 states? And so one problem now becomes a huge problem instead of just an individual problem. And there's a risk, and it's a size thing and a risk thing, and it really has two pieces to it. There's just the overall size and the risk associated with that. You're going down the highway, there's a vehicle next to you, there's black ice, the vehicle next to you is about to go out of control. And that vehicle could be an 18-wheeler with a 54-foot, 53-foot box on it, or it could be a smart car. They're both going out of control because of the same reason, but the risk associated with the impending accident is going to be a lot different. And so it's not just about the potential for risk, it's about all the pieces that come into play. And the other thing, and this is something that I try to say all the time when I go to talk to people, is that we know, and you'll see, that most of the fresh produce issues that we've had are produce from out of the country. Green bunching onions from Guatemala, or the serrano peppers from Mexico. A lot of the processing or packaged issues have been coming from the United States. The spinach in California, for example, which was bag spinach. But the thing is that if small farmers are overregulated, what does that do? That skews the production back to the places where the problems are. And so when you look at this whole thing from a risk-benefit analysis, you can't possibly treat a farmer with $5,000 gross income the same as you treat a farmer with $500,000 gross income, or that you treat a farmer with $5 million gross income. There has to be steps in here. Maybe the steps, some people it's education, maybe some people it's Commonwealth quality, and it's a food safety component of Commonwealth quality, and that's something that they can afford. And for other people, depending on their marketing and their size, it becomes full gap certification. Okay, skip over a couple of things here. So, I mean, we look at all this stuff, and sometimes we think to ourselves, if you think about all the possibilities of things that can go wrong, how the heck are we all still alive? These are just a couple of pictures from my own lettuce production. So the bottom line is individual growers will need to decide if they will become certified based on their customers' needs, the desire of the grower to keep that customer, and potential peer pressure. If you're selling a Hannaford's or Price Chopper and they're 5% of your business, you might say, I'm not dealing with Hannaford's. But if Hannaford's is, you have a $300,000 account and a $500,000 total operation, they're a big part of that operation, and you probably wouldn't spend the time and money to do it. So I always tell people, today you'll leave with an increased understanding of food safety and how you, your employees, and the environment impact it. You'll leave with the materials necessary to create a farm plan and prepare for an audit. And you'll also leave with the sobering realization that farming just gets less and less fun after you.